The first sign that something was off wasn't her silence toward me, it was her laugh. That sharp, rehearsed laugh I had heard before, but not directed at me in a long time. We were at her boss's party, a lavish gathering filled with people in suits that looked far too expensive for my taste, faces plastered with smiles that carried no warmth. I had put in effort for her that night. Black blazer, polished shoes, and even the tie she insisted I wear, things I normally wouldn't bother with. She had told me, "He's important, Daniel. Please, be on your best behavior." I went along, believing I was there to support her career. But the moment we stepped into that house, no, that mansion, I realized I was nothing more than an accessory she had reluctantly brought along. "Dan, this is Robert," she said lightly, barely brushing my arm as she introduced me to her boss. He was tall, with hair slicked back to perfection and a glass of amber liquor in his hand. His eyes skimmed over me like I was furniture, not her husband. 10 minutes later, when he called me David, she didn't even correct him. The night was a blur of artificial conversations and heavy cologne. She floated effortlessly from one circle to another, always a few steps ahead, laughing at other people's jokes, touching someone's arm when she wanted to make a point. When I tried to join her, she dismissed me with a polite smile and a soft, "Daniel, could you grab me another glass of wine?" I complied, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. But as the evening dragged on, the truth became harder to ignore. In that room, I didn't exist, not to her, not to anyone else. The worst part wasn't just being left out. It was watching how she came alive when I wasn't beside her. With me, she was indifferent. Without me, she glowed. I found myself standing near the floor-to-ceiling glass, looking out at the city skyline while she leaned into Robert, her fingers brushing his arm just a little longer than they should have. That laugh again, the laugh she used to reserve for me. My chest tightened. Around midnight, I stepped onto the balcony, the cold air biting at my skin. I pulled out my phone just to keep my hands busy. That's when I noticed her screen light up. A message preview. "Can't wait for them to leave." It was from her, sent directly to Robert. Not a work note. Not a group chat. A personal message. I didn't react, not then. I refused to be the husband who made accusations without evidence, the man who caused a scene at a room full of people who could crush me with their influence. So I waited. I watched. And slowly it became clear, this entire evening had been carefully orchestrated. I wasn't there as her partner. I was there to complete the picture. She once told me, "Married women don't climb as fast in this office, unless their husband looks dependable." That's all I was. A prop. A placeholder. When she finally joined me outside, her cheeks flushed from wine, she smiled as if nothing were wrong. "You okay? You look a little pale," she said, brushing imaginary lint from my sleeve. "I'm fine," I answered, my tone colder than the night air around us. She either didn't notice, or noticed and didn't care. The moment that truly shattered me wasn't an argument, wasn't anger, wasn't raised voices. It was when Robert came out, placed his hand casually on the small of her back, and she didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She let him. She introduced me like I was some casual acquaintance. "Oh, Robert, this is Dan. He works in software, something or other." I extended my hand, but Robert didn't bother taking it. She didn't correct him either. That was the moment I decided to walk away. No shouting, no accusations, no scene. I simply left my untouched whiskey on the table, slipped on my jacket, and walked out of that mansion. She didn't follow. Not that night. The drive home was quiet except for the hum of the engine and the ringing in my ears. With every passing mile, the distance between us felt less like geography and more like a wall that kept growing taller. I sat alone in the dark living room until 3 in the morning, waiting for her to come home. When the door finally opened, she strolled in, heels dangling from her fingers, completely unfazed to find me sitting there. "You left," she remarked, as if I had interrupted her schedule. "You didn't notice for 3 hours," I answered flatly. She tried to smooth it over, claiming I was imagining things, that Robert was nothing more than her boss, that I was reading into things that weren't there. As for the text message, she waved it away. "It wasn't about you." There was no regret, no concern, just irritation that I had caught it at all. And that's when it hit me. I didn't matter to her anymore. Not as a partner. Not as a man. I was an accessory she had grown tired of. The next morning, I didn't explode. I didn't beg. Instead, I quietly called my brother's divorce lawyer and began moving my finances. She never noticed. For 3 weeks, she never noticed. She came home later and later, wore perfume I didn't recognize, and smiled at her phone more than she ever smiled at me. And I let her. I let her build her own downfall. The night I left for good, it was pouring outside. I packed a single suitcase, gathered my important papers, and took one photo with me, our wedding picture. Not because of her, but because of the man I used to be that day. The man who believed in forever. On the kitchen table, I left a note. You wanted a husband who made you look steady. Now you can stand tall on your own. No accusations. No drama. Just truth. That night she called me a dozen times. I didn't answer. The next morning, one text came through. You're overreacting. Come home. But that place wasn't home anymore. Funny how quickly a house can lose that meaning. Weeks became months. She reached out only when her image took a hit. At work, people began whispering. Robert was eventually transferred after HR complaints from other women. Turns out I wasn't the only one who saw what happened at those after-parties. Her carefully built reputation began to unravel. But by then, I was already gone. New city, new apartment, living a quieter life without the constant weight of being invisible in my own marriage. Sometimes people ask if I miss her. What I miss is who I thought she was. I miss the nights we stayed awake, dreaming up a future I didn't realize she was already rewriting without me. Do I hate her? No. I just don't feel anything anymore. And that, I think, is worse than hate. I heard she resigned 6 months later. Rumor had it Robert stopped shielding her once his own reputation collapsed. I didn't reach out. I didn't feel the need to gloat. Walking away wasn't revenge, it was freedom. There's a moment everyone betrayed remembers. Not the discovery. Not the argument. The choice. The decision to stop begging to be seen. Mine happened on that balcony, the city glittering below, her laughter echoing inside. Meant for a man who wasn't me. I turned away from it then, and I've never turned back. Betrayal doesn't always scream. More often, it whispers while you're standing right there in the room. Have you ever stayed somewhere you felt invisible just because leaving hurt too much? Share your thoughts below. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more unfiltered stories of heartbreak, resilience, and new beginnings.